If there's one trope I'm sick of seeing everywhere in media, especially in children's animation, then it's this idea that you can be anything you want to be, and if you chase your dreams hard enough, you'll get there no matter what. It's a sentiment that sounds nice, and it can be satisfying to see characters we've become invested in accomplish their ambitions, but unfortunately that's not how real life works. You might say, well, it's a kids show, of course they're going to have a positive message, but is it really positive? You remember the depression Rainbow Dash goes into in Testing 1 2 3, when she briefly has to contemplate not becoming a Wonderbolt.
Do you know Pinkie Pie grew up on a rock farm? Maybe I'll go work there since I have no other plans for the rest of my life. Oh, come on now, Rainbow. You can't give up on your dream. Seems my dream has given up on me.
See this? This is reality for 99% of people, and it's not nice, is it? It's actually quite a bummer to grow up and realise that we have very little control over our destinies, and are likely to fail in our ambitions due to not having the right contacts, not getting the opportunities, or simply not being good enough. As an adult, looking back on these type of positive messages, it just feels like rubbing salt into the wound. That's why I'll always have a soft spot for episodes like Yakity Sax, which says, okay, so what if you don't have the skill to succeed in something you really enjoy? What happens then? The conflict of Yakity Sax centres around Pinkie Pie's love of playing a musical instrument called the Uvidophone from Yakistan. Her playing ability is so bad that it causes the rest of the main six to request that she give up her hobby, and it's quite neat to see how Twilight, with a prod from Applejack, uses what she learnt in horseplay by being upfront with Pinkie.
We all support you, but we're afraid you're just not good at the Ovidophone, and none of us want you to waste your time on something you can't do well. Oh.
However, this is the first major point of contention. Indeed, one of the episode's greatest detractors, Miss Anthropony, specifically targeted it in his review.
So the others tell her that she should stop doing it and not waste time on something she can't do well. Instead of, you know, try to improve or take lessons.
I'm sorry, what? It's made clear in the episode that Pinkie has been practicing the Uvidophone for quite some time at this point and is not getting any better. She's not going to improve because she doesn't have the skill, that's the point. I suppose you could write in a scene about her taking lessons and it not helping, but really that would just distract from the main focus of the story. So after abandoning the Uvidophone, Pinkie descends into a full-on manic depression, and we even see the return of her Pinkamena-style mane. Officer Triggerhappy argues this does not fit with her character.
Pinkie Pie would never mind giving up playing an instrument if it was irritating the entire town, because making the town irritable is completely contrary to her mission in life: to spread joy and happiness.
So in other words, Pinkie's entire function in life is to please others, and none of her own interests should ever take priority. Even if for the sake of argument we accept that is the case, which it isn't because that would be stupid, let's not forget how little resistance Pinkie Pie offers when told to stop playing the instrument. Not for 1 second does she try to argue or complain about not being able to play, even as it causes her to dive bomb into depression. Her friends asked her to do something and she obliged. If that's not selfless, then I don't know what is. Oh, but she would never get that miserable because of a musical instrument we've never seen or heard of before.
The episode never does anything to explain why playing the Ovidophone meant so much to Pinkie all of a sudden. It would have made more sense if it involved something more familiar with her, like baking or throwing parties.
Baking, parties, spending time with her friends. She loses the heart to do any of that because one method of making others happy didn't work.
That's right, she's the pony who bakes and hosts parties, and that's her entire character. She's incapable of discovering new interests or doing anything else. Seriously, what is everyone's deal with wanting Pinkie to be a one-dimensional party pony like something from a poorly written fanfiction? If you really think that this is out of character, then you barely have a superficial grasp on her character to begin with, and this is coming from someone who's supposedly one of Pinkie's biggest fans. That initial period when you first start a new hobby can often be when you are most invested in it, and in case you haven't noticed, Pinkie Pie can be pretty spontaneous and is not known for her subtlety, so of course it makes sense for her to become madly passionate about the Uvidophone so quickly.
I just love playing so much! You complete me.
And then right as her enthusiasm is at its peak, it gets taken away from her. All that excitement over her newfound interest is left unfulfilled. Is it really any surprise her friend's shallow attempts at cheering her up fail miserably? Pinkie's despair ultimately leads her to Yakistan, where she hopes to find some fulfillment from being around skilled Uvidophone players. Yes, it is very inconsiderate of Pinkie to bail out on her friends without any warning like this, but look at the state she's in. Her actions can probably be put down to being distracted more than anything else. The Uvidophone meant that much to her, and Pinkie's lack of social self-awareness has long been an established character flaw. In any case, the trip appears to have been in vain, as Pinkie Pie feels no better. That is until Twilight finally realises that just because she isn't good at playing the Uvidophone does not mean she should give up doing what makes her happy.
But you were the ones who told me to stop because I wasn't good.
And we were wrong.
Playing makes you happy.
And as long as it makes you happy, it doesn't matter how good you are.
What's great about this is it can be applied to lots of real-life scenarios. You might not grow up to be that famous artist or professional writer you dreamed of being, but there's nothing to stop you doing either of those as a hobby. If it's something you enjoy, then there's really no good reason not to. Even Officer Trigger-Happy acknowledged this is a great message, though like many it seems he found fault with the execution, and we'll get into that in a second. But first let's address another criticism of this conclusion, that it isn't believable the Yaks would appreciate Pinkie's efforts. Now it's true the Yaks do have a history of reacting explosively, let's say, when it comes to things that aren't perfect, but it's made very clear that in Yak culture value is placed on the happiness of the performer regardless of skill. Honestly, how can you miss this stuff? Anyway, now we come to the biggest metaphorical axe people are grinding with the moral of this episode.
In the context of all of these scenes of Pinkie making life difficult for others with her playing, the way Pinkie's friends and the Yaks encourage Pinkie to play the Uvidophone kind of sends the message that you don't have to worry about whether or not you're making someone else's life harder. That message is toxic enough on its own, but it is downright insulting coming from a story about a pony whose sole purpose in life is to make other ponies' lives better.
What triggered Happy and the others are somehow overlooking here is that MLP is a show that doesn't take itself too seriously. Those scenes of Pinkie's playing causing mayhem are just mindless slapstick. It's a fun way of establishing how comically bad her playing is, nothing more. Don't forget, we're talking about the same show that once ended a story with Paraspites destroying Ponyville, and that was played completely for laughs. Granted, there tends to be less slapstick these days, but every time a more light-hearted episode does come along, it's like everyone wants to dissect it and treat it as if it's dead serious. If you were one of those watching the Mean Six and questioning how the characters could be so gullible and not notice Applejack's cutie mark and so on, then here's a newsflash. You're overthinking this way too much. Switch your thinking cap off, sit back and enjoy Chrysalis's adorable prance. Then name me one other villain who can be so adorable while being maniacally evil and unbalanced all at once. I mean, come on, what is wrong with you people? Okay, so maybe I have some bias with that episode, but getting back to Yakity Sax, there's a general rule that having good themes means nothing if you fail in the execution. However, that isn't what's happening here. In spite of whatever imagined problems the detractors have with this episode, it actually holds up pretty well overall. I won't say it's perfect, but one of the attributes of a good critic is actually being able to realise when you're reading too much into something, and when to tell yourself it's just a show and you should really just relax. This is Midnight Chimes, and now I'm off to Twitter to gush about Best Changeling Queen.